Hey guys, welcome to SciPi Academy. The SATs are approaching fast and you need help. You've come to the right place because in this video, I will walk you through how to ace the SAT reading. Let's get right into it. Okay, tip number 1, take real tests. My advice for you would be print out the answer sheet, the bubble, so you can bubble it in and have the questions open in front of you. That way you can get a real feel for actually filling in the circles by hand, which does add up to some time. Also, the tests are the best way to practice, right? You get to understand the layout of the SAT and you get to understand if you have timing difficulties. Therefore, you should take it in one sitting. If it takes you 3 hours, make time for yourself. Try to do on the weekends on Saturday. That's what I do. I do it Saturday morning so that my brain naturally gets used to taking the SATs every Saturday. Okay, tip number 2. Timing. You need to learn how to pace yourself for the SAT to be successful, especially on the reading portion. Let me break it down for you. You have 65 minutes for the entire SAT reading. In these 65 minutes, you have to answer 52 questions, and in these 52 questions come in 5 passages. Therefore, you have around 10 to 11 questions per passage. What you should aim to do is do 12 minutes per passage. Try for 10, but 12 minutes per passage. The way you break up your time is read first and then answer the questions. For the reading, take around 3 minutes to read the entire passage. Now, this isn't like a quick skim. It doesn't take you like 1 or 2 minutes to just skim through it, but it's not an in-depth read. You just want to get a good sense of the entire passage as a whole, and you're going to be able to know where what is, right? So outline this map in your brain of each paragraph. That takes you around 3 minutes, okay? No more than 4. Then you move on to the questions, and this takes you about 8 to 9 minutes, depending on how long you took in your reading. Now, since you've already read before, you can quickly relay your information back and forth. So I find it to be the best way to go about answering it. Read first, then answer the questions. So 3 minutes for reading, 9 minutes for answering the question. That's 12 minutes per passage. Times that by 5, okay? By the end of it, you've spent 60 minutes, which leaves you 5 minutes. Now, these 5 minutes are extremely important. You can either go back to questions that you left, or you can go back to questions that you found hard and review them. Now, the 12 minutes per passage thing, I recommend that for the high scorers, right? The people who are aiming for the 1600 to 1500, okay? Though it's useful for everyone, it's especially useful for them. However, if you're aiming for something lower or like 1200, 1300, somewhere around there, not necessarily the highest score, what I recommend for you to do is slow down and score more. Now, what do I mean by that? Let's say your strengths are the sciences and the literature passage, but you're bad at the history one. What you want to do is you want to read the blurbs before each passage and see which one's which. Now, when you come across the history one, you want to skip it and come back to it at the end. And you want to devote more of your time for the science and the literature ones because you know that you can pick up the most marks over there. Okay? Now, the reason why this strategy doesn't work for the people who are aiming for the highest scores is because you need as many marks as you can in that one. You can't let anything slip. But for the ones that are aiming for 1300, the strategy where you can afford to miss out on a couple of marks, but you can guarantee your other marks in the other 3 or 4 passages that you're strong in. So if you're aiming for something like 1200, 1300, slow down, score more. Okay, approach. Now, everyone has a different way that they approach the SAT, but what you need to do is find your own strength, okay? Again, take the real SATs, take practice tests, and then understand what works best for you. When you go into the SAT for real, you need to know what you're going to do. For the SAT reading, there's 5 passages like I mentioned. One of them is literature, 2 of them are science passages, and 2 of them are history/social study passages. Find your strengths, okay? Before you go into the SAT, know how you're going to approach each type. You also want to be able to read the passage properly. When you read through the passage, you should be able to quickly identify what each paragraph is saying, okay? A quick summary, if you want. The intro, the conflict, the resolution, okay? But you want to be able to see if there's a main character twist, just underline it right there in your book. This is the pivotal point of the paragraph, of the passage. This is where everything switches, something like that. So you want to be able to read it properly. Now, if you read something and you have to reread it and digest it, you don't want to do it again. Now, if you read something that's especially wordy and it takes you some time to digest it, what you want to do is when you understand it, make a quick note of it on the side. So you can quickly refer to the note and understand what that paragraph is saying rather than having to reread the paragraph. Now, one of the most crucial tips that you need to know is that the questions appear in chronological order, okay? They appear as the passage progresses. So the first few questions will be around the first few paragraphs of the passage, and the last few will be about the last few, except for the ones that are about the general theme. I'll come back to those at the end. Let's say you have a question that says blah 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 blah, line 7, okay? And then the next question doesn't have any line references, but the one after does, okay? Let's say that one has a line reference of line 21. Now the way you're going to do this is you have line references for the two questions, so you can answer them immediately. The one in the middle that you don't have a line reference for, because all the questions are arranged as they appear in the passage, you know that that question, it has the answer somewhere between line 7 and 21. So really use that to your advantage, okay? When you're not given a line references, use the surrounding questions to understand where you're going to find the answer for that question. Now, one of the biggest tips for you in the SAT is using the process of elimination, or what I call POE, P-O-E. Now, all of the questions in the SAT are multiple choice questions, except for the last few in maths, but for the reading portion, all of them are multiple choice questions. Therefore, if you see an answer that's wrong, cross it out, eliminate. You can actually find a lot of the answers just by using the process of elimination. Whatever is glaringly obviously wrong to you, cross it out. Okay? When you're left with one or two, well, I'll tell you what to do about that. Now, before I go on and tell you how to choose between two option choices that look really similar, I want to walk you through 4 different specific question types and how you're going to go about approaching them. The first type of specific question is specific paired questions. Now, what these are is that it's a question that directly asks you about a specific point of the passage, okay? And then the second question asks you to find evidence in the passage for that. And they'll give you line references for 4 different choices. How you want to go about approaching this is before you look at any of the answer choices, answer the question to the best of your ability. Understand what the correct answer is. Whichever ones are wrong, cross them out. Whichever ones don't align with your predicted answer that you have just by looking at the passage, cross them out. Then see which answer choice is the best, and parallel, what you do is you see which evidence backs up the statement that you're about to make, and whichever two match up and support the evidence best, that's the one you want to use. Specific question type number 2, general paired sets. Now, general paired sets are almost the same as specific paired sets, but it's about the passage as a whole. Now, you don't want to run around through the entire passage trying to find your evidence. Worst scavenger hunt in history. What you want to do is use the evidence and then base the statement off of that. Since it's talking about the entire passage as a whole, you want to find which evidence best supports your answer. Okay, that's what the question is. So you find which answer makes the most sense to you, and then parallel process of elimination, and you cross out whichever answers do not match up. Now, what they try to do is they try to trap you. They might throw in an answer in there which is actually correct. But the problem with that is it doesn't pair up with any of the answer choices. If something does not pair up, cross it out. It's wrong. Okay? No matter how right it looks, if it doesn't pair up, it's wrong. Specific question type number 2, main idea and general questions. Now, this question is normally the first or the last question. Don't do it at first. Do it after you've answered all the other questions, because this allows you to get a better understanding of the passage as a whole. So, the main idea, general questions, not the general paired sets, just general questions about, they might ask about a theme of the overall passage or a character and ask you to explain the character. Those questions, I suggest doing them at the end, because by the time you've answered the other questions, you get a better understanding of what the passage is saying. The last type of specific question type is 2 passage questions, or the comparison between 2 passages. Now, they might ask you what's supported by both passages. You want to find specific support in both passages. Be wary of the usual traps that I'm going to discuss next. They might also ask you about the points of contention between 2 authors, and what you want to do is, again, find support in each passage for the author's particular opinion. And by support, I mean solid evidence. Don't try to infer what the author is trying to say. Make sure you have a solid statement ready where the author is saying that exactly. And the third type of question they might ask you about this is, what would the author say? Okay, what would so-and-so say about so-and-so's view? You want to find out what was said in that passage on that exact topic. When they ask you something in the SAT, especially on the reading test, it's actually the answer is right there in the text. They won't just make something up. So therefore, you want to find out where they picked out that question from. You want to find the specific support in the passage and work off of that. So basically, taking all of that together, the basic approach of the SAT is this. Read the blurb and identify the passage, the type of passage and the source. Understand if it's your strength or your weakness, and are you going to attempt it immediately or going to come back to it at the end. Then, read through the passage. Take a relatively quick read. Understand the themes and the core message, and see what the characters are and what the overall passage is saying. Okay? As well, make a mind map of each paragraph and understand what each paragraph individually is saying. Okay? Nothing too in-depth, but not just a skim. Then select and understand the questions. Do the questions in order, but save the general questions, like the ones that talk about the entire passage, for the end. Use line references, and you have to make sure you find solid evidence. If there's no evidence in the passage for what your answer choice is, it's wrong. Simple as that. Then, what you want to do is you read the question, and before looking at the answer choices, you want to go back to the passage and find what you think is the best answer. Predict an answer in your head, okay? Because the answer choices are there to trick you. They will throw in 2 or 3 answer choices that are very similar to the actual answer. And if you read through the answer choices, you'll get caught in a trap. You don't want that to happen to you. You go to the passage, you read it, you predict an answer. Whatever doesn't align with your prediction, cross it out. And you use the process of elimination. Eliminate what is wrong and not consistent with your prediction, and voila, you're left with your answer. Here are some traps that the SAT will throw at you in your exam. Answer choices that are mostly right but slightly wrong, sometimes known as half right, half wrong answers. These answer choices are entirely wrong, okay? Even if there's one word in the answer choice that doesn't align with the rest of the answer or the rest of the passage, it's completely wrong, okay? That's what the SAT will try to do with you. And when you cross out with elimination, you'll be left with 2 answer choices. So that might be one of them, and you want to look out for that trap. The second type of answer choice is that they could be true and they look good, but they don't have concrete evidence in the passage. Let's say you're reading a science passage, and it's about the next type of answer choice that could be a trap is that the answer choices that could be true, they look good, but they don't have concrete evidence in the passage. What do I mean by this? Let's say you're reading a science passage, okay? And it's talking about your health. In the answer choice, you could say the risk of heart disease increases for someone who's more obese, okay? That is true, right? But if it doesn't state that in the passage explicitly, that's not the correct answer on the SAT. It's correct as a whole, yes, but it's not correct for that exam, okay? So you have to make sure that it has solid based evidence in the passage. Now, in the SAT, I want you to think of your answer choices as a darts board, okay? You want to find the answer that's on the bullseye. But the problem is that perfect answers in the SAT rarely exist. The answers that do exist are answers that don't have any flaws, okay? There's nothing glaringly wrong about them. So what I mean by that is, instead of the bullseye, you want to look for the answers in the closest inner ring, okay? Those answer choices are more often than not correct. The other answer choices might be correct. They might still fall on that entire darts board, but they aren't closest to the bullseye. You want to get as close to the bullseye as you can, okay? So for one answer choice, it will be completely right, as in it will have no flaws. The other answer choices will have at least one flaw in them. You just gotta find out what the flaw is, and you can eliminate those choices. The last type of trap that the SAT might throw at you is answers with extremes and all-encompassing words. What do I mean by this? For example, they might say that the passage's only purpose was so-and-so. Now, the passage didn't only have one purpose, so you can't just make a statement like that where it covers everything. So look out for those traps. Now, this is the last point, and it's not that major, but the SAT does have its own personality. Okay, it has its own quirks and its own ups and downs, right? It's different to the type of test you do at school. In this test, the cause and effect have to be explicit. Don't try to infer answers. So let's say you do some outside reading. Maybe you read a science journal. Now, in the SAT, you're asked about basically the same topic. If it's not stated on the passage that you get, it's more often than not wrong, okay? Don't try to infer your outside knowledge onto the SAT, okay? So your outside knowledge and your reading and your general reading knowledge could be useful for the SAT, but don't use it to base your answers off of. You need to find solid evidence on the passage in the exam right there. Okay guys, thank you so much for watching. That's about it for the SAT reading. We do have the SAT writing coming out very soon, so make sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification so you find out first when it comes out. Make sure to like and comment down below and tell me if you found this helpful or not. Now, the notes that I was using in this video are available in the description down below. I use these as speaker notes, so I elaborated on the points, but you could use them in reverse and use these as notes for the video. And I hope you found them super helpful. And if something didn't make sense in the video, I did detail it in the notes, so go back and check that out for sure. Thank you so much guys for watching. Take care.